My mother looked me dead in the eye with a smirk that I will never forget and told me, "Good luck surviving without me," while she tossed my packed bags onto the front porch like they were trash. She actually laughed, a cold, sharp sound that echoed through the quiet neighborhood, convinced that I was a helpless child who wouldn't last a week on the streets without her control and her roof over my head. I stood there shivering in the rain, 20 years old with nothing but $50 in my pocket and a phone with a dying battery, while she slammed the door and turned the deadbolt. But what she didn't realize, what she had completely forgotten in her rush to ruin me, was the secret account she'd opened in my name 10 years ago to hide money from my father during their divorce. Before I tell you how I turned her cruelest moment into the biggest mistake of her life, I have to ask you, if your own mother tried to leave you homeless just to prove a point, would you feel guilty for taking back what was legally yours? To understand why she was laughing, you have to understand the kind of woman my mother, Diane, really is. To the neighbors, she's the pillar of the community, the woman who organizes the bake sales and has the most manicured lawn on the block. But behind closed doors, she is a master of emotional manipulation. Growing up, everything was a transaction. If I got good grades, I was allowed to eat at the table. If I didn't, I was ignored for days. She controlled every aspect of my life, from the clothes I wore to the major I picked in college. She insisted I stay at home during university so she could keep an eye on my morals, which really just meant she wanted someone to do the housework and be a punching bag for her bad moods. The conflict that led to me being kicked out started over something so incredibly small, or at least it seemed small at the time. I had landed a part-time internship that paid a little bit of money, and for the first time in my life, I didn't ask for her permission to accept it. When she found out, she went nuclear. She claimed I was becoming defiant and ungrateful for the life she provided. She demanded I hand over my login credentials for my bank account so she could monitor my spending. When I finally said no, when I finally stood up and told her that I was an adult and deserved a shred of privacy, that was it. She didn't scream. She didn't even argue. She just went upstairs, packed my things into 2 suitcases, and told me that if I wanted to be an adult so badly, I could start by finding a place to sleep that night. The first few hours were a blur of panic. I sat at a 24-hour diner, nursing a single cup of coffee, trying to figure out which friend I could call without feeling like a total burden. I felt like a failure. Her words kept looping in my head. Good luck surviving without me. She wanted me to crawl back on my knees, begging for forgiveness, just so she could have total power over me again. I was scrolling through my emails, looking for my lease agreement from 3 years ago just to see if I had any rights, when I stumbled upon an old folder in my digital archives labeled Important Documents Divorce. My parents split up when I was 10, and it was a nasty, drawn-out legal battle. My mother had obsessed over every penny. As I looked through the old scanned PDF files, I saw a document I hadn't thought about in a decade. It was a confirmation for a custodial high-yield savings account. During the divorce, my mom was terrified my dad would get half of her inheritance from my grandmother. To hide it, she moved $15,000 into an account under my Social Security number, naming herself as the custodian until I turned 18. She had used me as a human piggy bank to shield her assets from the court. The crazy part, she never moved the money back. She had spent years telling me we were struggling, while that money sat there, untouched and forgotten by her, but legally tied to my identity. I remember my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I thought the people in the next booth could hear it. I pulled up the bank's website. Because I was now 20, The custodial status should have technically expired, meaning the money was mine to claim if I could verify my identity. I spent the next 2 hours on the phone with customer service, my voice shaking as I provided my social security number and answered security questions about my childhood pets and my first school. When the representative finally gave me the balance, I nearly dropped the phone. With 10 years of compound interest and the initial deposit, the balance stood at exactly $27,432.18. I was sitting in a cheap diner with wet hair and a broken heart, and I was looking at a small fortune that my mother had completely lost track of in her arrogance. So, that was the crossroads I reached. I was homeless, insulted, and cast aside by the woman who was supposed to love me most, all while she sat in her big house thinking I was starving. But I had the keys to a kingdom she thought she'd hidden away forever. Before I tell you about the look on her face when she realized the money was gone and how I spent it to build a life she can't touch, I want you to stop right now. Pause the video and go down to the comments. If you found out the person who just kicked you to the curb had hidden $27,000 in your name, would you take it and run, or would you try to do the right thing and tell them? Let me know, because what I did next changed everything. I didn't hesitate. I initiated a full transfer of the funds to a brand new account at a different bank that she had no connection to. As the transfer pending screen glowed on my phone, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders that I didn't even know I was carrying. For years, she had used money as a leash to keep me close, and now, her own greed during the divorce had provided me with the ultimate escape rope. I used a portion of the money to book a decent hotel for a week, and within 48 hours, I had signed a lease on a small, furnished studio apartment near my university. I didn't send her a single text. I didn't call. I let her sit in the silence of her victory, probably waiting for the phone call where I'd be crying and apologizing. The explosion happened exactly 3 days later. I suspect she finally went to check that account. Maybe she needed the cash, or maybe she just wanted to gloat over her secret stash. My phone started vibrating so hard it nearly vibrated off my new desk. I had 30 missed calls in the span of an hour. Then came the texts. They started off concerned, with her asking where I was, but they quickly devolved into pure, unadulterated rage. "How dare you?" she messaged. "That is my money. You are a thief. I put that there for your future, and you stole it from me." The irony was delicious. She hadn't put it there for my future. She'd put it there to screw over my father. If she had ever intended for me to have it, she would have told me about it when I was struggling to pay for textbooks, or when I was working 3 jobs. The confrontation happened a week later when I went back to the house with a police escort to get the rest of my belongings, the stuff she hadn't thrown on the porch. She was standing in the driveway, looking older and more haggard than I'd ever seen her. She tried to scream at me in front of the officer, calling me a criminal and demanding I transfer the money back before she filed charges. I stayed completely calm. I looked her right in the eye and said, "Mom, you put that money in my name and under my social security number to commit what was essentially a form of fraud against Dad. If you want to go to the police or the tax authorities and explain why that money was hidden for 10 years, please be my guest. But as far as the bank is concerned, it's my account. And as far as I'm concerned, this is the survival fund you told me I'd need." The look of pure, impotent fury on her face was better than the money itself. She realized in that moment that she had no cards left to play. She had tried to break me, and instead, she had funded my independence. The aftermath was messy, of course. She tried to turn the rest of the family against me, telling my aunts and cousins that I had emptied her life savings. but I had the documents. I showed them the dates of the deposits. I showed them that the money was moved during the divorce. Once the truth came out, half of the family stopped talking to her because they realized she'd lied to the court back then, too. My dad was actually proud of me. He told me to keep every cent and use it to finish my degree debt free, which is exactly what I'm doing. I haven't spoken to my mother in 6 months. Sometimes I feel a twinge of sadness, but then I remember the sound of her laughter while I stood in the rain. She thought she was teaching me a lesson about how much I needed her, but the only thing I learned was that I'm much stronger than she ever gave me credit for. I used that $27.00 to buy my freedom, and honestly, it was a bargain. At the end of the day, family is supposed to be a safety net, not a cage. If someone tries to use your survival as a weapon against you, they've already forfeited the right to call themselves family. I'm finally living my own life on my own terms, and I don't have to look over my shoulder anymore. It's a strange feeling, being completely free, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. Like this video if you think I did the right thing by taking the money, and subscribe for more stories about people finally standing up for themselves. Do you think there's ever a way back from a betrayal like this, or is the bridge burned forever? Share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. I'll see you all in the next story.